Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are covering the beginner's jewelry class or jewelry smithing. I plan to cover in this video what beginners would be interested in buying, what they would like to buy depending on the different things that they would like to make. Now, all of you out there that are beginners watching this video, do not become terrified seeing all the stuff that I'm going to show you here today, or that you currently see within the realm of my camera. This is collecting over a long period of time and being interested in all kinds of different methods for jewelry smithing. That this is just my collection of what I have built up, and this isn't even all of it. One of the things that I wanted to show you was a die cutter, but it seems our house gremlin has run off with it. We call him Limdul, and he tends to make things pop up way after the fact when it's too late. I needed them before. So what we are going to cover first off is a very general set of tools that pretty much every person is going to need to start off with. And you're going to see some oldies in here. Your typical chain nose pliers. These are the pliers that you see pretty much everywhere. They come to a nice normal shaped or even shaped point. There's nothing too special about them. Flat inside, slightly rounded on the outsides. This is but your basic bread and knife or butter and knife tool you'll be using for just tons and tons of things, even things that aren't even really related to him. You are going to need a wire nipper or cutter. I always call them nippers. Little parrot guy here. This guy cuts everything nice and flush on a wire on both sides. Typically when you see wire nippers, this guy might look a little bit more familiar to you. This guy is also a great little tool. Most kits, beginner kits, will start off with this guy. And if you can see in the video here, this guy's nice and flush along one side. That side is always going to be the side whenever you're cutting wire that is going to give you a nice flat side. But the other side, because of the inside of this guy, the inside comes to a point. So the wire on this side of your pliers is always going to have a point on the end of it, which you're either going to have to file off or turn this guy around and cut off. This guy is great for getting into teeny tiny places, especially if you're doing wire weaving projects like this guy here, this earring I've done. He's great for getting down into those teeny tiny places to give that wire a little nip. This guy can't exactly get into those small spots. So it's really good to have both. You can cover a very large variety of things and needs for these guys. I use this guy for 90% of what I do, and this guy just goes in and cleans things up. Now for our next tool, our square nose pliers. So nice and flat and wide on the top, nice and flat on the insides here. This guy gets used for quite a few things, again, depending on the projects you end up doing, whether or not if you're going to use him more or less. You'll often find that you're going to be dual wielding here. And you'll have one set of pliers in one hand, one set in the other, and you're doing all your work with. So this guy is pretty great. He does a lot of awesome things. I predominantly end up using him to flatten projects out, like my ear wires, if you watch my ear wire beginners class. Sometimes your ear wires get a little wonky as you're making them, and you come in with that guy and you flatten them back into shape, and then they're nice and neat and even again. Now, well, your bent nose pliers, honestly, I find them to be just a tiny bit gimmicky. Certain strokes for certain folks. I find that a lot of these guys will cover what these guys do, but I'm sure there's plenty of you out there that'll find this to be way easier. He comes in just about any jewelry beginner kit as well, so you will end up getting him. Play with him, have fun. If there's just an odd thing that you're trying to do, getting into that angle, he's the guy for you. I'm a bit of a tomboy and I'm a bit of a bully. I go in there and I make it do what I want it to do with just 2 tools when one might have been easier. Now for your next tool, the round nose, they are nice and round all the way on the ends and all the way along the sides here. This guy is pretty darn crucial. He's just about as crucial as these 2 guys here, the chain nose and the nippers. And depending on which nippers you want, whether or not this guy goes in there. He helps you make your jump rings. He helps you make all your hoops and loops. He does everything. He does a humongous amount of work. Definitely, if you're going to get a hold of a pair of these guys, you're going to want something with a comfortable grip. There are pliers with memory foam grips, believe it or not. They do exist out there. This guy works great for me. They also come in like teeny tiny, only about that tall. I don't know about you, but my hands are going to cramp up on something that small trying to play with it, so I go with a longer handle. Pretty much all these tools will come in a mini version. And there again, depending on who you are, my husband has way bigger hands than I do, and he likes playing different handheld systems for video games. I've tried playing on those things, and they hurt my hands because they are not big enough for my hands. I've always had that problem, and he's got great big man hands, and he never has. And so, for everybody, it's your comfort. I recommend if you're going to get a tool that you don't use often, like for this guy here, for me, I don't use crimps too terribly often. I like to do unending wraps and different things like that where things don't open and they're all built into each other. I like making my own findings. I like to do a lot of wire work. So this guy doesn't get used too terribly often, therefore I don't mind it being a little smaller because I'm maybe 2 times in a project, and that's necklaces most of the time. But this guy is a crimper, and if I can get the camera to focus on it, you can see how it has all these little loppy-jawed areas inside of it. Well, that's what you use to fold and crimp your crimps, which are teeny tiny little tubes for ending your necklaces and such. So if you plan to do a lot of wire necklaces, different things like that, you're gonna have to have one. Might as well just have one just in case. You never know, but it's something you can hold off on. Now, this guy is a looper. I love my looper. My looper and my round nose, they're my favorites. Yeah, this is my Trinity right here. Even though it's more than 3, I know what a Trinity is, but loopers, this guy gets you your jump rings. You can make a whole bunch of jump ring coil coming out, and I'll have a video covering how to make your own jump rings. But your jump rings can coil out. You got 3 different sizes on this guy. You can get all kinds of hoops and loops and bending your wire the way you want. This guy here I use the looper for the top part on my earring here. And then this bracelet I've made, I used him almost everywhere. So it's a lot better to use this guy than doing all of this bending by hand sometimes. It's just a bit of a pain. So that is your different sets of pliers. Now, if you're just beginning and you're wanting to do something pretty simple, like necklaces, and you're going to use a cord or a nylon covered cable, any of those kinds of things that are super, super basic to begin with, I pretty much just recommend you getting the basic kit, which will cover you, and you. And if you feel like in the future as you're going along, because this guy cutting nylon cord, it doesn't matter so much if there's a pointed end or a flush cut. Flush cuts really matter when you're just doing wire weaving, a lot of wire work, or any dealing with wire. You don't want a jagged, pointy end to be stabbing somebody when they're wearing your piece, or when you're wearing your own pieces. If you think you're going to be doing a lot of wire work, I recommend pretty much all of them there. So you're going to be pretty much buying these two separately. Now, there might be some kits out there that I don't know about that might include this guy. But it's a pretty nice little investment. A lot of those different hobby stores, they have coupons. I know Joann Fabrics has a 60% off every once in a while. You could always get their kit for 60% off. Michaels has a 50 a good deal of the time. You can just buy their kit, use the 50 on this, and then maybe pop this guy in. And then whenever that 50 pops up, add another one to your kit. Now, another set of pliers that you might end up seeing, and do pardon the state of these guys, you might see these on the shelves, different places. Yeah, they're pretty munched up. I've been bad with mine. Poor guy. I need to replace these. But these guys are nylon, and these are, you can take these off. They're replaceable. You can get all kinds of different parts for them and whatnot. And what I typically use these for, a lot of people use them for other things because of them not being made out of metal. They're not going to mar up and destroy your wire or put marks in your whatever it is that you're doing. I like using this guy to straighten out my wire. So if there's a kink, I'll put the wire in there and just like how you curl ribbon. And you can see I've used wire that is way too strong, way too sturdy, and way too big, and it's just completely munched this guy up. The more you use him, the more he's going to wear down. Really, the only reason I wanted him was so that way I could straighten wire fairly easily, and I don't know if it's really that great of an investment considering you got to replace these so terribly often. Now you saw these two guys, these oldies but goodies. These used to actually be in a watch shop. They're old as dirt, I know, but they still work. And if you're worried about your pieces, your metals getting marred up, all you have to do is add to your kit tape. Putting a little bit of tape on this and covering it up, softening those edges a little bit, and especially the tooling marks on the inside where you normally see the striations, so that way you can grip things. And covering that up really helps out like 100%. Now, you can't go in there and death grip everything and force it into place without leaving a mark, and definitely depending on what your metal is made out of, it's going to be even easier to leave marks behind. But this helps. This helps keep a lot of things from getting too overboard, and especially covering this guy up, since I use him to flatten a lot of my stuff. Whatever ends up falling outside of my pliers, the edges, could always leave a mark whenever I'm trying to flatten something with this. So you cover it with a little bit of tape, give it a light squeeze, and then it doesn't leave a mark nearly as easily. So really that kind of helps out that. And again, this guy is a great tool. You'll probably end up needing this for tons and tons of stuff. You'll never even begin to understand all the different uses that this guy has. So it's a great piece to add to your toolkit. It's an odd tool, but it's a good tool. Now, these are bench blocks here. They are made out of steel. They are heavier than you would imagine them actually being. Looks like I gotta clean this guy off here. And I am not going to actually start hammering here because that is loud, and I really don't know how to do a video. I've been trying to figure that part out. But this is where you can do a lot of your flattening, definitely with stamping and putting, the letters, and you got a sheet of metal and you're putting your stamps in there. If you want to flatten something, you put it in here, put this on top. Honestly, if you're going to flatten something, you're going to want a bigger hammer than this. This guy is not very big. Great little brass hammer. Brass hammers are great. And you'd be surprised the difference between this brass hammer and this little guy. I'm not really sure what he's made of. It's probably steel. Even though this has got a shorter handle, great big brass hammer. Has a great deal of heft, a lot of weight to it, and it feels really nice. You really feel like you're accomplishing something with it. Probably even just a household hammer, construction hammer would work out just fine to a point for some jobs. But this little brass hammer is great, and they come in bigger. Honestly, I wish I could afford the bigger one, but you know. And another thing I like to do with my blocks, if I have a thicker wire, this is, or a gauge is also called. Let me get this guy unwound here. I don't like wasting anything. I've paid for this. I want to be able to use every teeny tiny bit of it that I can. But that's not going to make for a very great piece. This is all crinkly and nasty looking. So, cut off a length that is appropriate. Put this guy in between the 2 bench blocks. They might take a little bit to get going here. Yeah, maybe some of these kinks are too big. Get started. I'll flatten this guy out just a little bit. Take some of the edge off there. See, wonderful square nose. There we go, that's a little better. Maybe he'll roll this time. No, still got a big one in there. Now, I got a lot of those kinks out of there, but you can still see it's pretty wobbly there. There we go. So put him in there, putting pressure down. This will be loud, pardon me. And he's just getting a bit of gunk on him here. I need to clean these poor things off. Treat them a little better. And there we have it. It's a whole lot straighter than it was, and it's straight enough for a great deal many projects that I would normally use it for. So that allows me to use my tools and use my materials a lot better. It's one of the tricks I love with this guy anyway. There are rubber ones of these out there. I don't see the purpose in them, honestly, to tell you the truth. Because the reason you need a bench block is because of the hardness of it. And you don't want to end up doing it on doing whatever it is you need a bench block for on your countertops, because then you could end up stamping letters into your countertops, and if you have actual granite countertops, well, there goes a great big chunk of your countertop onto the floor. With the rubber ones, I really just have not seen the purpose behind them, because if you're actually doing stamping, you have a metal blank right here, and you have your stamp kit. You pick out a letter, you put the letter on, you take the hammer, ping, and because it's rubber on the bottom, the rubber ends up absorbing all of your momentum that you're getting, and you don't end up with a very good stamp. So I really don't see the purpose of the rubber ones. But that is the metal bench blocks. I like having two. Getting one to start with, you know, you don't have to start rolling or anything like that. Don't worry about that. But getting one to start with is great for a great many different projects, especially if you want to put some shape into your metal. This piece is actually a student's piece, so it's not quite... You can see where it's been hammered a little bit. You can do it to where you don't see that, but you can see where it's got these nice flares around the sides. Just adds a little bit more interest and shape, form, function to your pieces that, you know, rather than them just being straight wire. So it's awesome. It's great. At least try starting off with one. It's not something you need from the very beginning. If you don't plan to do wire work, put it off for a good long time until you kind of want to play with moving and shaping metal yourself. So he's probably something you may not really want to invest in right away. And along with that, same rules go for the hammers. Good. Where are you going? Alright. Now, wire, if you get into that, wire comes in all kinds of shapes, colors, sizes. So much of everything. Beautiful colors. It's the entire rainbow out there. I will end up doing a video on just wire itself, but I just wanted to show you guys all the colors available. Size is called a gauge. So the smaller the gauge, 16, the fatter the wire. And the higher the number, 30, the thinner it gets. Now, there are little plates out there that, for instance, if you end up losing your tag for your wire that tells you what size it is, now these little plates, you can just take the wire, put him in here, and if you have a lot of resistance getting in to those little slots, but it still goes into the slot, yeah, there we go, right there, then that is the size of the gauge. But if it won't go in at all, then obviously that's too small, it's a bigger gauge. But if it goes in really super easy with no real effort, then that is too large. And so it's a pretty simple concept. On mine, the middle number is the actual gauge itself, or the gauge size itself that we use. I'm not really sure what the other sizes are for. And then the inside of the hole just gets larger and larger. So this guy is pretty great, especially if you end up with a whole bunch of little nips and leftovers. For instance, this guy is separated from the rest of his pack. I can always find out what size he is with the gauge plate. Another tool that a lot of people don't realize is pretty awesome to have in their kit, Sharpie. You can either, for instance, I see a lot of people marking their round nose where they commonly use their round nose the most. So that way, for instance, if you're doing a project where you're making the same thing over and over again, you want it to be uniform and have the same size over and over. So you might mark where you want where you made your sizes on there, so that way you can use the same spot over and over again to get a uniform look. Whoop. Also, with stamping, when you're stamping plain metal blanks with letters, you can take this guy, mark it in, rub off the top, and then it'll leave the black ink inside of the letters themselves. Lots and lots of uses for this guy. He's great. You get metal sheets from a lot of hobby stores. I personally don't particularly care to do that because, as you can see, this kind of has a silvery finish. Odds are that's nickel. If it's cheap, it's nickel. But you can also see that there's a little bit of copper showing there. And if you look even further on the inside, the middle has brass. So this is just 3 different coatings over the top of this. And then you sand it down, you can get the copper layer, and if you sand it down some more, you can get to the brass layer and get a look. I don't like that. I like knowing exactly what the metal is I am buying at that time. This is not what I particularly care for. For those of you that don't have metal allergies, who cares? It's great. You can see, again, my die cutter's missing. Limdual took off with it. But with these sheets, you can do a couple of things with them. You can have a die cutter where it's pretty much it looks like these 2 bench blocks, and it'll have holes in the top, and then you slide it in underneath one of the holes. You'll get a little circular piece and pop it down until it falls through the bottom, and then you'll get a disc underneath your cutter. And that's what I've been doing here, just cutting out a few pieces for another project that I was, or a teaching thing that I was doing. So yeah, you can also pre-buy those if you like. Something else to go along with that. Come here, guys. Dapping block. These come in metal as well. I would imagine the wood one's not going to last too terribly long. You can see where I've been using them in the metal has left a nice little ring around the inside there. I imagine it doesn't have too terribly long of a lifespan, but it works for now until I get to the point where I want a metal one. And you can pretty much start doming things, doming projects, gives you, you know, just a little bit more form and function for something if you're going for a particular look. Got several sizes all the way around, and there are really, really super elaborate ones that'll have egg shapes in them, and then you're trying to form an egg shape, and just tons and tons and tons of variety out there with these guys. I just got a simple little round one. These are the two pieces. You put the disc in here, you put that there, and then you take your hammer, go at it all kinds of different angles to move that piece of metal into the form and shape itself, and then it comes right out. So that's just another little fun thing to do. Obviously the wood ones are going to be way cheaper than the metal ones. Probably something not every beginner is going to be necessarily interested in, unless you are interested in the forming of blanks and such. Now, having a file set's pretty nice, and you don't have to get your files from a hobby shop. I mean, there's all kinds of tool places. A lot of these things can be bought at any tool store. But having a nice file set is pretty great. It'll get you all those rough edges off if you are doing projects where you are cutting a lot. Cutting out very particular shapes. You don't want something just round. Then these guys will take off the edges and some of those really tiny, hard to get areas. And they come in all kinds of different shapes. And that guy, and then you got a round one. Well, that's not the round one. Well, that's triangle. Regular flat one with a rounded top. Oh, there's my round one. A little bit more traditional there. That always makes me think of a butter knife. Probably don't need to have a whole bunch of these guys to start off with. Just having two's nice. The one that has the flat bottom but is rounded along the top, plus a nice flat one. Probably really all you need to start off with. And if not even that, just start off with the round one with a flat bottom for your beginning part. You can probably get by with one for a very, very long time. Now these guys might be pretty familiar. If you are interested in making rings, this is probably going to be a lot more beneficial for you. This is obviously ring size. You have a client who wants to, or you yourself, you don't know what your ring size is. You take this guy, you put it on, you find out what size their ring is, their ring finger is, or whatever finger they want to wear your ring on. On the inside here are the sizes. That's really all there is to this guy. Comes on a big loop that's together, so that way you never lose them. And this guy is the ring mandrel. It's pretty easy and self-explanatory. This mark here is the size 6. So whatever you're going to be making as far as rings go, the middle of that ring is pretty much going to have to fall right on this 6 line here. I personally don't care to make rings because I do like wearing rings, but the problem is that when you're doing rings, you have to make that ring for every size that you think is going to be wearing the ring. And that gets a bit tedious, I feel. And a bit of a pain, but hey, you know, it's something that somebody might feel really passionate about, and it's a great idea to have. Also, another awesome thing to do with this, I also used him to form some of the larger hoops in this that my looper isn't big enough to have made. So at least you can use it for a lot of wire working and a ring, dual purpose, awesome. I'll also use the handle sometimes for sizing or just forming my wires like I did in this guy here. An X-Acto knife, if you end up using a lot of mixed media, paper in your pieces, or even leather, It would not be a bad idea to have. But he's there. Obviously, he's not going to be going through metal anytime soon. Oh, Sam. My cat's talking to me. Here are some leather needles, and the big difference between leather needles and regular needles or upholstery needles is this is a blade on the edge. You can see that this is pretty much a triangle. It has a bladed point, and the sides are also a blade. So that's why he is in this guy here. This is for sewing leather. I do some leather bracelets that I find to be a lot of fun to play with. So, you know, if you're going to be sewing through it, you either need a sewing machine that can handle, heavy-duty sewing machine that can handle leather, or you are going to have very, very sore fingers if you don't have one of these guys. They're typically pretty cheap, $1.50, maybe $2, depending on where you end up finding them at. I go to a bunch of reenactment festivals. That's where I got these guys from. So, yeah, that is what a leather needle looks like. There are smaller ones out there. This guy is a hole punch, pretty much. It has two different sizes, and there are hole punches out there from metal that have multiple sizes if you need it. But it's a pretty simple idea. You put your metal in, twist it down, and keep twisting until you feel it punch through. Come back up, wiggle it off if it wants to. Sometimes it doesn't always want to work the way you want it to. There we go. Allows you to put holes and blanks and different things like that you want to turn into necklaces and such. He's pretty useful. If you plan to be working with a lot of beads, you're really not going to need him. If you plan on working with metal blanks and stamping and stuff, he's a pretty good idea to get. Move out of the way. Now this guy is the silliest thing out there, I think. He's pretty weird. What this guy does, you take two wires, you put them in here, you clamp it down, and I always need to read the instructions for this guy every time before I use them. You put two pieces of wire in here, you clamp it down, lock it into place with that, and then you put your other end of your wires, tie it to something, a chair, table, whatever, have somebody hold it for you, the other end, and then you grab a hold of the end and you walk away, and it ends up spinning those two wires together. And you can just keep on doing it until it's as tight as you want it to end up being in the end. This is just a weird little thing. You can also do it by just pliers and it gets a little bit annoying if you do if you like that texture and you use a lot of wire that's like spun together and everything, then this might be a good idea to have if that's something that you plan to do a lot of. Otherwise, this is just fine. Let's see here. Now, one of the other hammers that is available out there, you got a regular typical hammer there. You do have your brass hammer. And this guy is a rawhide hammer. And again, he's pretty old. A rawhide hammer is pretty much for things you don't want to leave marks on it. I mean, obviously this guy, he'll leave a mark. This guy will definitely leave a mark. He's a lot heavier. This allows you to do some shaping and some forming that you need to do. If you had a hammer that was made out of one of these two guys and you were trying to roll a piece of wire with it, you would end up with a whole bunch of marks on your wire. This guy's not going to leave as many marks, so if you were to do that with it, it'll come out looking a lot nicer. Not anywhere near as scuffed up or scarred up. So yeah, that's another option that's out there. You can easily get by with this guy for quite a long time. You probably won't be worrying too much about finding a rawhide for yourself for quite a while. They also have nylon hammers out there, which I believe is for the purpose to replace the rawhide. And I imagine they do the exact same thing. Probably the nylon one had a little more heft to it. But he's an oldie, he's a goodie, he's in my kit. And as you can see, he's lasted forever. I don't necessarily know that the nylon's going to be that way. The nylon could end up being like this guy, where a few uses and, well, you got to replace it or do something with it already. I know that's not going to happen with this guy, at least not so far. Alright, and then something else to think about for your toolkit in the future is a jigsaw. I've taken to calling this the Jaggy Saw. For those of you who play Monster Hunter, you'd probably get that. This guy is for getting your metal blanks, and let's say you want to saw a bird out of the metal blank. You want a little metal bird. So you go ahead and draw your bird template on there, put your blade in, and have fun, because it takes a little bit. And it takes a lot of practice. You're going to be, in the beginning, you're going to be breaking a lot of these little blades that go with this guy. And you're going to be buying a lot of extra. There again, tool store, Lowe's, Hobby Lobby, or not Hobby Lobby. That's not a tool store. Lowe's, Menards, and the like. That's where you're probably going to find a lot of these. And these guys, I think it's worth mentioning, are measured in aughts. That's the size units. So you'll see where, for instance, these blades in the middle, they are a 2/0 blade. That's 2/0 blade. 3/0 blades. So as you're breaking them, keep that in mind. Okay, I broke a 3/0 blade. Well, I gotta go get a new 3/0 blade. I have no idea why they're called that, but you know, whatever. They also come in bundles, and there will be a brass wire on the inside holding them all together there. And then you just put them, you open up the jaws here, you put one in the top, tighten it down really tight, open the other, put it down in. You can either put the butt of your saw into the middle of your chest bone, squish them together, tighten the last screw, and then when you let it go, it'll be nice and tight, stuck in there. And you want your blade to be in there straight, otherwise you have better odds of it snapping and breaking on you while you're cutting whatever it is that you're wanting to cut out. So yeah, he's a pretty handy dude to have, especially if you want to do a lot of custom blanks, sizes, and shapes. He's pretty great. Now, I got this guy just brand new. I put it off getting one for a long time. So yay, brand new, nice and shiny toy. We all love our toys, right? Now this one's probably going to be one of the few, the last bunch I got here, you're going to be seeing some brand names. I just want you to know I have not used this yet. I have yet to play with it. I bought it to do some experimentation with, so we will see how it does. But this is resin. Now keep in mind, if you want to do a lot of resin pieces or resin projects out there, not all resin comes with the hardener. So keep in mind when you go shopping, this resin does come with its own hardener. The hardener is over here, resin's over there. And as you squeeze out what you want to use, the two resins mix in the bottom here, and everything's hunky-dory. It measures itself out. You don't have to worry about, finding out how much resin you have to add per ounce, or hardener you have to add per ounce of resin. If I could talk today. This guy does it all for you, and because it's in two different things and it's in a plunger like this, I can control how much I use. So if I don't want to use all this resin right here today, I can just use a teeny tiny amount that I want to use. And then I don't have to worry about it. I can hold all this stuff off till the next time I want to play with it. Or maybe my first experiment didn't work so well. I got time to think about, okay, well, why didn't it work? And this guy gives you the time. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I can't wait to start playing with it. And for those of you that don't know, resin, it's pretty much a hard plastic that you will put over the top of photos, pictures, whatever that are in a self-contained little container. A lot of, what do you call them? Thank you, Sam. paperweights that have like special things inside of them. Maybe it's a little beach sandy scene. A lot of those will have be made out of resin themselves. So yeah, I have not played with this. I'm not endorsing this product. I've yet to do anything with it, but I just wanted to show you what's available out there in resin, and definitely what to keep in mind when you're playing with it, or when you're thinking about playing with it. Now these are two different glues here. The E6000 is the only jewelry glue that I know of. It is an industrial type jewelry glue. A lot of kits you'll see out there, maybe you don't want to play with the resin, but there are kits out there where it'll have the bezel, you put the picture on top of it, and then it comes with the resin disc already hardened and everything. You just glue it onto the top. This is the guy you glue it with. It's pretty hardcore. I've seen it do some pretty silly things. Just the thing to keep in mind is it needs 24 hours to fully harden. And they also come with needles for more precise injections into very particular areas. It's an interesting alternative to soldering, and that is going to be a whole different video for a whole other day if I ever get that far. So yeah, he's a pretty great little tool to have for a beginner for sure. And for those of you who want to do a mixed media, this guy has gotten way out of hand here. What on earth has happened to you? This is great for mixed media. I use this a lot with my leather bracelets, my leather and lace bracelets. It's flexible. It allows for especially the leather to wrap around your wrist, and it does not destroy the glue. It doesn't harden. As you can see with this guy, a lot of flexibility in that, and it's pretty much kept its shape there. So this guy, so far I've been pretty happy with it as far as a fabric glue for leather and a regular fabric. I haven't had any allergic reactions, and it has not given me any kind of chemical burns, so I find it pretty great so far. And the last thing I want to talk about are sanding sticks. Pretty much, these are just sanders and paint stirrers. Great thing to use your old paint stirrers with that may be around your house that you don't plan to use for anything else. And all you do is you go to a hardware store, whatever, you get several different kinds of sandpaper, get some rubber cement, glue the stick, glue the back of your sandpaper, then put them together, and then you have a nice little sanding stick. You can end up paying some silly prices for these guys when, I mean, it's a super easy thing to purchase and do yourself. What I end up using these the most for, again, rings or rounded objects that need sanding, especially if I've done a lot of hammering with them. If I make like a little box, metal box, the barrel of the outside might still be kind of dented and hammered. So let's say that this is made out of metal. You would take your sanding stick and go around. Now, because you're not using your fingers would concave to every little turn and nook and cranny that's going on in the metal piece itself. This guy is only going to hit the high points because, you know, the wood on the inside, it's not going to cave into all those little divots as you're going. So as you're sanding, it's going to make the outside smoother and smoother and smoother and get rid of all those imperfections. And you start off with a really, I guess that is my hardest one. You start off with a really gritty sandpaper to begin with. You want to get all your work done first. Then once you get the outside of even a ring, this would be the same method. Once you get the outside at least smooth, it may have a lot of texture to it, then you go to a finer sandpaper, and then you do it again. And then you go to a finer sandpaper, and you do it again. And then finer still, do it again. Until you get down to the point where you got polish and nice semi-abrasive cloth. The polish is going to be doing most of the abrasive work and then you just go at it until you got it nice and shiny and polished the way you want it. Now there are once you get to that polishing step. There are plenty of big tools out there and large equipment that you can also do that with. But for the home beginner, this is a great little trick, I think, to be getting started. Now, for all those people out there, I won't be able to show you any of this stuff because I don't even have it myself yet. But there are also, I save a lot of my my little bits of metal and whatnot. I keep track of, okay, well, this is copper, so it's going to go in the copper bag. I'm playing with aluminum, this is going to go in the aluminum bag. I got a whole bunch of Ziploc bags labeled for each type of metal that I typically use. And then from there, my hope is one day that when I get a forge, anvil, and there are all kinds of little mini forges out there, you know, they're like maybe this big. I do have to have an outdoor space for it. Right now I'm working in my kitchen. But I can melt those down. I can make molds and different things like that. There are sand molds. There are all kinds of ways to make molds. But plan to melt them down, use them as molds, and then there is no waste. And that's pretty important to me. I don't like wasting things that I have already put money into. Every little bit. So yeah, that is the beginner's tutorial of a lot of the things you're going to see on the shelves when you are buying your first jewelry stuff. Again, a lot of beginners, really, when you're out there and you're playing around, these guys are going to be your biggest part of your purchase. And if you take care of your pliers, you treat them right, you do good by them, they'll do good by you. There we go. And again, you, and you. These guys come in your typical kit. These guys, traditionally, you tend to buy separately. So just something to keep in mind there. And thank you everybody for participating in my video today. If you like it, please click the like button. Also, there's a subscription button so you can keep up to date whenever I post something. And also, you can also go to my Etsy account at Naughty Dog Studios and help support me there. I got a lot of my stuff available for sale as well. And if you have any questions or any ideas of videos you would like to see me do in the future, please let me know in the comments. Always wanting to hear from you guys. You all have a wonderful day. Bye.